ناتي دليت ووترو بس حقنا لا تقال سبب كان مسرح رجعنا حمد من بارو أبعد يقول حارنا ودسم له حارة
Dear EriPM viewers, today I have the privilege of bringing you Caroline Edelstam from Edelstam Foundation in Sweden. Caroline Edelstam is a Swedish human rights defender and the president of Edelstam Foundation. The foundation awards the Edelstam Prize for outstanding contribution and exceptional courage in standing up for one's belief in the defense of human rights and works with the forming public opinion and advocacy. With those fields, the foundation is named after her grandfather, Ambassador Harald Edelstam, from 1993 until 1989, a Swedish diplomat who during World War II worked as a diplomat in Nazi-occupied Norway, helping to protect and smuggle hundreds of Norwegian resistance fighters. Jewish. Later, Edelstam was the Swedish ambassador to Chile during Augusto Pinochet's military coup in 1973. He conducted a major confrontation and negotiation with the Chilean military and obtained the release of more than 1,000 persons from the National Stadium and elsewhere in Chile. Welcome, Caroline, to EriPM.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you again. I really appreciate. So today we are going to discuss about the prize, the recognition that was awarded for Dawit Isaak, and in general the work of the Edelstam Foundation. Okay. So in November 19, 2024, Dawit Isaak, Eritrean Swedish journalist, is awarded the Edelstam Prize. And then can you give our viewers a brief history of the Edelstam Foundation Prize and its objectives?
Thank you so much. Yes, so the foundation was created in 2009 because we saw a great need to give support to courageous persons within the defense of human rights. Many times persons who dare to follow their moral compass and to stand up for human rights, they become very lonely. Employers, friends, family can turn their back on them, and it's important to have one organization supporting them and advocating for their cases. So we award the prize every second year to persons with exceptional courage and support in their cause. So we work very closely to monitor their case and hopefully to advance their situation.
Okay, it's wonderful. So in 2024, the prize or the award, the recognition was given to Dawit Isaak. So the laureate, Mr. Dawit Isaak, is a Swedish Eritrean journalist and is one of the 11 Eritrean journalists who disappeared in September 18, 2001. Since then, nobody knows their whereabouts and nobody knows whether they are alive or dead. And Dawit is one of them. So obviously the recognition that was given to Dawit, what were the main characteristics for Dawit to receive the prize and recognition? What was the reason for that?
Mr. Dawit Isaak was awarded the prize because of his outstanding contributions and exceptional courage in standing up for freedom of expression, one's beliefs, and in the defense of human rights. He was one of the co-founders of Setit, which was Eritrea's first independent newspaper, and he dared to openly criticize the Eritrean government and advocated for human rights and democratic reform and the free speech. And this, of course, led the government to harass him, threaten him, and with continuing interrogations. However, he continued with his advocacy and went beyond his personal interest for the principle of human rights and democracy. And he continued to influence the Eritrean people to care about their fundamental rights.
All right, Miss Caroline. I think the November 19 there was a reason behind that date. Also, why the Edelstam Foundation want to give that prize on that specific date. Can you tell us why the foundation chose November 19? I know there is a reason behind, and I want the public also to know about it.
Yes. No, so he was first imprisoned in 2001 in September, but then in 2005, on the 19th of November, he was actually released for 2 days for medical reasons. However, they decided to take him back because Sweden didn't handle this very well. There was no evacuation plan in order to get him out of the country. And it was a lot of media attention in Sweden regarding his release. And the Eritrean regime decided to actually bring him back into prison. And he has been held incommunicado ever since.
Okay, no, absolutely, very sad story, obviously. So, what is the message, or what does the Edelstam Foundation want to convey the world by recognizing Mr. Dawit Isaak for this prestigious award?
So, Mr. Dawit Isaak's punishment, his perpetual unlawful detention, he has never been charged with a crime. He is defenseless and he is deprived of his basic rights without a trial. His de facto status of civil death, he is untenable and it's unlawful. So enforced disappearances and persecution of journalists are grave human rights violations. And Eritrea systematically curtails a wide range of fundamental human rights, including the freedom of expression, association, assembly, and information, which is handled with censorship, arbitrary arrest, detentions without trials, and systematic and pervasive torture. Mass roundups and arbitrary arrests, as well as the detention of journalists and human rights defenders without trials, are unexceptional in Eritrea. And Mr. Dawit Isaak actually represents the voices of many, many other journalists in the same situation.
Okay, the situation in Eritrea is very bad. We all know that. And Dawit is also an Eritrean Swedish journalist. He's a Swedish citizen, and is forcibly disappeared for 23 years now, going for 24 years without any due process. And nobody knows his whereabouts, none his family, nobody. And since he was like a Swedish citizen, many have a great expectation from the Swedish government to pressure the Eritrean regime to release, or at least let Dawit Isaak have a fair legal proceedings. However, this never happened. Why do you think the Swedish government failed to pressure Eritrean government in releasing Dawit Isaak?
I believe they have not been firm enough, and they have not placed demands on the Eritrean regime for proof of life, nor his right to a consular visit. They have adopted a so-called silent diplomacy, and now it's proven that it's useless because he is still in prison 23 years later. I think it's time for them to change strategy, and I think they should be much firmer in their approach and put pressure on the Eritrean regime to actually release him. And in Sweden, financial sanctions have not been considered, for instance. And Sweden could also learn a lot from other countries how they handle similar situations.
Okay, yeah, I mean, a lot of people have disappointments how the Swedish government handled the Dawit Isaak case. I mean, even right now, after 23 years, it looks like, there is not much activity going on from the Swedish government side. So what do you wish, or what do you expect from the Swedish government, even at this point, to at least work, secure the release of Dawit, or at least, know his whereabouts, whether he's alive or dead? What should the Swedish government do at this point?
They could put demands, and they could be much tougher in their approach, and actually say that there is no option. They need a proof of life, and they need it now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean the Eritrean regime, we know that Eritrea is a very isolated country, and a lot of countries have a different way of pressuring the regime in Eritrea. For instance, if you come to US, there's a lot of economic sanctions, a lot of sanctions against government officials, and so forth. Why is the Swedish, they didn't have any such actions against the Eritrean regime? Do you think that, they'll kind of let the Eritrean regime do what they want to do? Even in recent cases, if you see, there was the regime representatives do so many things inside Sweden. They couldn't even curb, for the regime embassy representatives, to do what they do in Sweden. So, what do you say about this, Caroline?
I think it's Sweden has a weak approach in this, and I'm surprised that they are not firmer. They could do many things. They could install financial sanctions. They could limit the embassy staff and the agents collecting taxes in Sweden. The Swedish chief prosecutor could investigate President Afwerki and the members of his government. Sweden could bring the case to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Sweden could also bring the case to the European Parliament or the European Union. They could bring the case to the United Nations, to the Human Rights Committee, to the Human Rights Council, or to the High Commissioner for Human Rights. There are many things that could be done.
There was a research that was, I think, a couple of months released by a Swedish group, I think, think tankers, how the Eritrean regime tried to, continue the repression outside of Eritrea. And this case was the case about Sweden. So they mentioned so many things, how the transnational repression continues in Sweden. There were stuff that was mentioned, the ways and means that the Eritrean regime does the transnational repression through the embassy, through consulate, by 2%, through the fake organizations, through religious organizations, non-profit groups. All this is, researched and documented by Swedish people, not Eritreans. So with all these things going on, but still, the Eritrean regime is freely roaming in Sweden more than any other country in the world. Even, the neighboring countries like Norway, they have the Transnational Repression Act, or at least, legislation. But we don't see that in Sweden. Do they, because they don't care about the, case outside of Sweden? It's like, for instance, I'm in US right now. The new administration is America first, they really care about others. Is that the case in Sweden?
I am sorry, I have no answers to this. I think they are paralyzed and they are not acting on, they are not using this arena, which is a shame. Mm-hmm. It could be a good way to implement those limitations, as you say, as they have done in many other countries.
Yeah, at least take the recommendation from the Swedish think tankers who are presenting their case. Anyway, despite this widespread attention, the attention that the Edelstam Foundation, and then it's been a lot of also campaign, for the release of Dawit Isaak. However, the Eritrean government has yet to take any meaningful action to secure his release of Dawit Isaak. So what measures do you think should the international organizations and also countries take to pressure Eritrea? Not only Sweden, but all these other organizations as all, and then in general the world.
I think that organizations should continue to raise the case, and people there are many other prisoners in similar situations. We should continue to talk about those and what's happening with the freedom of expression. But I think that other countries could actually help, and we could bring the case to the European Union and the Parliament, European Parliament, and they could put pressure on the African Union. And there are many things still to be done.
So why do you think is the reason for the Eritrean regime to ignore all initiatives and calls from governments, international organizations to release Dawit Isaak? Why do you think they ignore all these calls, all this pressure and everything?
It's because they are a brutal, totalitarian regime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed, very brutal and totalitarian regime. Do you think that not only what kind of role do you think that the Eritrean should also play in this regard? It's been 23 years. There are so many people disappeared in Eritrea. Not only journalists. It's been a lot of people, political. There are a lot of political prisoners, and then so what role do you think should the Eritreans play? To pressure or to do what is right on behalf of those all disappeared?
They should release them. Eritrea could, they have the power to release people who are unlawfully detained, of course. And they should learn, and they should also follow the international legislation we have in regard to human rights and the whole legal system.
Mm-hmm. So what about the Eritrean public, like me? So many people, like, for instance, there are so many Eritreans in Sweden. What should be their role? The Eritreans, not the government, but the Eritrean public, to support, for instance, the Edelstam Foundation is trying to, campaign, trying to get the attention of the public and everything. So what should be our role? What does the Eritreans do to help you guys, to help the Edelstam Foundation and others working for Dawit Isaak?
I think the Eritrean community, the people, they should speak up, and they should not leave those grave violations of human rights unnoticed. They should keep the memory alive of their fellow imprisoned countrymen. It's important that they remain resilient to the regime's propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully they will listen to that one. So the award was given to his oldest daughter, Betlehem, in his absence. During the ceremony, his wife, friends, and other family members were present. And I think you are the one who are given the award to Betlehem. And how hard do you think it is for the family, not knowing his whereabouts and whether he's alive or dead? How hard do you think it is?
The family is, of course, really devastated and very traumatized because of this. Can you imagine having your father, brother, husband imprisoned, not knowing that if he's alive or where he is for more than 23 years? And actually, according to international law, family members of the disappeared are recognized as victims of enforced disappearances as well. So, no, it's terrible. They are all very, very sad.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel when you meet, families, victims of disappeared people? I know that, it's not easy. It's very hard, even for you, when you are like talking with his wife, with his, daughter and friends, can you just describe me your feelings, when you meet people, the victims?
You feel very humble, and a great compassion. And of course, it's really sad. It's difficult to know how to talk about this because I cannot even imagine myself what it would be like to have a family member who was in prison somewhere and not having the right to visit and not the information where a family member is, if he is alive. No, it's terrible.
Yeah, after all this agony, how do you describe their resilience? The family members. I know you met Bethlehem, his wife Sophia,
Mm.
and how do you describe their resilience? How when you meet them, his oldest daughter, I think she's in filmmaking. She's also making, they're also campaigning for their father.
Yes.
So how can you describe their resilience?
They have been forced to become activists, human rights activists themselves. This is not a chosen path
Hmm.
of career that none of the family members did. They have been forced to become activists, working for their father, brother, husband's release. And this has, of course, affected their whole life. But it's very impressive to see, but it's also very sad that they have been forced to take this role.
And his, I think, probably see his youngest, I guess, his youngest brother is also in Sweden, Isaias. He's been campaigning, fighting for his release. I think he did, since early, he was, kidnapped, for almost for the last 23 years. I
Mm.
know you met Isaias, also. What
Mm.
can you tell us about his, fight, his, his resilience, as well about his Isaias?
He's also a very courageous person. And he, as you say, he has been, since the first day of Mr. Isaac's kidnapping and imprisonment, he has been trying to reach out to the authorities to find information from the government in Sweden, to push, and still continue to attend events, raising his voice in finding out the whereabouts of his brother.
Does the Edelstam Foundation do anything else, to just secure the release of Dawit Isaak, or to work for the release of Dawit Isaak, in addition to recognition and prize? What else does the Edelstam Foundation does to help Dawit and his family?
We engage in the international community and advocate, as it's a duty for the international community to act in prevention of genocide and other egregious abuses when domestic authorities collapse or they fail to respect or ensure fundamental human rights. And we continue all the time to try to find ways to enforce national and international law and to promote accountability for serious abuses of human rights. And we try to uphold the important principle that no one is above the law. Democratic countries in the international community should put pressure on the perpetrator, in this case, Eritrea, which is essential, and it could have a noticeable effect if many countries go together and put pressure on Eritrea.
I know that there are a lot of Eritreans, working or just against the regime in Eritrea. Would you think that change in Eritrea, or regime change in Eritrea, would bring closure to the families? Should the Swedish government or other European countries also help those trying to work or for regime change in Eritrea?
I think it's important, and we just have the case of Syria recently, where you've seen that a change of regime actually affected the imprisoned people. There were many prisoners who were released after the change of
Bashir al-Assad.
government. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of countries, they are contemplating that, helping the opposition group to for regime change. So what can be done in Sweden? Swedish is very lukewarm. The least that I can say is, but what or how should we engage them so that they can be actively participating in helping the opposition for the regime change, because that will ultimately also lead, as you say, for the release of prisoners, and also improvement of the human rights condition in Eritrea, because there is a very, very bad record of human rights in Eritrea.
I think the only thing we can do in Sweden in actually affect anything is to keep talking about what's happening, to try to alert media and use the voice of media to inform about the situation in Eritrea.
Okay, so as you mentioned, media is very critical. So what can be done to pressure the media attention, to keep up the pressure and media attention on our disappeared journalists until they release it? Of course, you guys are working on it, but what are the strategies so that the pressure keep going?
It's just to continue to talk to everyone, should try to engage people around them, to continue to talk about the situation. And journalists actually they play a crucial role in scrutinizing power and their governments. And it's difficult when you imprison the journalists, because then no one is obviously scrutinizing the power in the country.
Yeah, especially when there are countries like Eritrea, there is no free press, when nobody can say anything inside Eritrea. We are talking about the people in Eritrea. The people inside, they cannot even say a word about the situation inside Eritrea. So the fight for justice for a disappeared person is a fight against forgetting them.
Yes.
People who disappeared, they say that they only die in their cells only when people outside forgot to talk about them, remembering them and honoring them. So what can we do to remember them every day rather than on occasions, so that they can be alive, whether even they are dead or not?
We should continue to talk about them all the time, and we should continue to raise our voices, and we should continue to stand up for human dignity and human rights. We should continue to talk about those egregious crimes, and we should continue to promote accountability for serious abuses of human rights. And where violations have occurred, states must be held accountable. And this is also the reason why journalists, for instance, are important, so they can scrutinize the situation, and the governments should then be held accountable if they are violating human rights and other rights, such as the international legislation, etc.
Yeah, I think we have to keep talking about them. That's very, very important. They will only die when we forget them. So we shouldn't forget them. We shouldn't only also talk about them when there is only occasions, when there is, like the prize and so forth. We should always talk every day. We should always write about them every day. We should also condemn the regime every day. I think that's the way forward, and that's what I believe as well. So during the award ceremony, France 24 journalists reached Yemane Gebremeskel, information minister, to ask about Dawit Isaak, and then also the award he was receiving from the Edelstam Foundation. During the phone conversation, he told her the issue about Dawit Isaak was an old story. And he hung up the phone by telling her not to waste his time. I'm going to play the clip, the report of the journalist, and then I would like to hear your response after that, okay?
Dawit Isaak has been in prison for the past 23 years in Eritrea, without trial, without charge, and with no word from the government about his whereabouts or his health. Isaak set up Eritrea's first independent newspaper, and in 2001 he was arrested after publishing articles calling for democratic freedoms. The current government, led by President Isaias Afwerki, has been in power since the country gained independence in 1993. Under his authoritarian grip, all political opposition has been crushed and any dissent is harshly punished. Now, in recognition of Isaak's courage in the face of this injustice, he's been awarded the Edelstam Prize, one of Sweden's highest honours for human rights. Earlier today, I called Eritrea's Minister of Information, Yemane Meskel, to get a reaction. He told me that this is an old story, that the country has been very clear on its policies, before telling me to stop wasting his time, and then he abruptly hung up. Meanwhile, international organisations like Reporters Without Borders have said that they will remain mobilised until Isaak is released from prison. The award will be handed over to Isaak's daughter in Stockholm on November the 19th.
Okay, as you heard, the news reporting, there is deep arrogance from the Eritrean regime and from the Eritrean information minister. And he was saying that this is old story and don't waste my time. And how can you respond to this, Caroline?
Yes, what can one say? I think it's only a token of their total disrespect of legitimate requests. But it also shows their weakness in not even being able to discuss the matter. Yes.
Should they be referred to the Criminal Court of Justice? Like Yemane Meskel, the authoritarian leader Isaias. Should they be referred to, the Criminal Court for Justice, so that they can get persecuted or they can get brought to justice? Because none of this, I see in many countries, leaders, government leaders, officials, they were referred to those organizations, but not with Eritrea. So do you think that should they be referred?
Yes, I think they should.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
States should be held accountable when grave violations of human rights occur.
Mm-hmm.
Basta.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. The regime in Eritrea has very much disregard to the international community, and then the arrogance is just palpable. You can feel it. How arrogant they are. When you have so many people in just kidnapped, and nobody knows about them, and they say that that's all the story. This cannot be all until we see they are released, or at least until we know where they are. But it's very arrogant people, very arrogant regime, and I think everybody should keep fighting for them. So, Caroline, I'm just going to kind of wrap up my questions. What messages do you want to send to the Eritrean people about your efforts to secure the release of Dawit Isaak, and what kind of support does your organization need from my fellow countrymen and women?
As I said before, I think what the best that the Eritrean people could do is to keep the memory alive of their fellow imprisoned countrymen, and they have to stay resilient to the regime's propaganda, and they should continue to speak up and not leave those grave violations of human rights unnoticed.
I really appreciate, Caroline. Any last message you want to convey, or any topic that we didn't raise that you may feel is important that you want to mention? And I'll give you the last chance.
Thank you so much. No, I think it's important that I would really like to say that the Eritrean government should start to listen. And my last message would be from our foundation, the Edelstam Foundation, that we call on the international community to act, since the Eritrean government is failing to protect their own citizen, Mr. Dawit Isaak. in a humanitarian, security, and human rights perspective, and they are not fulfilling their obligations under the international law. And the Edelstam Foundation respectfully asks the authorities of the state of Eritrea to free Dawit Isaak together with his other still imprisoned journalists and members of the G15, and in any case to immediately reveal Dawit Isaak's whereabouts and to respect without delay his right to be visited and assisted by a lawyer or by Swedish consular authorities.
Thank you, Caroline. I would like to really appreciate for the work you've been doing, and also the organization that you are leading, the Edelstam Foundation, advocating for Dawit Isaak and for all Eritrean journalists, and then also other members of the G15 and so many disappeared Eritreans. Your work, your courageous work is very important for us, and I would really like to appreciate you. I would also really to thank you on behalf of myself and on behalf of the Eritrean people and on behalf of the families of and the victims. You know, that's very important. So your work is very critical for all of us, and you should continue, and we will also support you. We will support in every way that we can to make sure that your campaign is a success. With regard to us, Eritrean Public Media, we would be happy in any way to collaborate, to magnify, also to campaign together with you, so that your voices and then your cause can reach everywhere, especially inside Eritrea. Thank you again for giving me the time to speak about Dawit and also the recognition that he receives from the Edelstam Foundation. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Anok. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Satellite television EriPM مس حزبي إهن مهن مبالن نابز قدس المدرخ من السجارن ناب 14 ختمات أمريكان كندان كاب مجابيت حدا جميرة عرض كتكبرهم بز مسرت دنفر مجابيت حدن دالاس مجابيت كلتا بي إريا مجابيت شمانتا سياتل مجابيت شعتم أتلانتا مجابيت 15 شارلوت مجابيت 16 وينيبيغ مجابيت 20 شعتن منيابوليس مجابيت 30 إدمانتون ميازي حمشتم كالغاري ميازي 6 تورونتو ميازي 12 أب مودة دما واشنطن دي سي ميازي 13 أبزي ناي إهن مهنزة ناي حزب حتتات كنملسن حسابات كنسمعنينا أب مودة دما حزب بتساتفو واننوتو أب تكال ساتلايت تلفزيون EriPM كراغت كنصبينا ساتلايت تلفزيون EriPM